Hello and welcome to Inflatable Sup Authority's test of the Bluefin Cruise 10.8 versus the Bluefin Cruise 10.8 Carbon. We're going to be comparing both boards on water performance factors such as stability, tracking, maneuverability, and speed, just to see how they compare to each other, and I'll be giving you my thoughts. Stay tuned. And now, let's try stability of the Bluefin Cruise 10.8, original model. Give it a look, see. Feels pretty stable. It's inflated to 14 psi. So we just paddle around. I should also note that before using these paddles, make sure that this little adjustment part right here is tight. There's been a couple of times where I've tried these paddle boards and they've been loose, so always bring a screwdriver and just double check. So far, stability feels pretty decent with this board. Like, I'm standing, feels pretty good. Like, I'm doing some paddle strokes, I can do side by side, no problem. Without having to worry about falling in the water, which is pretty nice. Okay, welcome aboard Bluefin Cruise Carbon. So we're gonna try stability. Let's see what the board is. Okay. One of the first impressions is that this board definitely feels a little more sturdy. That's because of the two bladder system. I also do like how this bladder is not very noticeable at all. Some other paddle boards, it kind of protrudes outwards, but you can only see the slight outline here. So I feel like Bluefin has had more practice integrating the second bladder into their paddle boards, while some other manufacturers, the work is a tiny bit more, I'd say, sloppy. So upon first impressions, because of the extra sturdiness, basically the extra rigidity, the board does feel like, it feels stabler, more stable, I should say. So even going to the edges, yeah, it feels pretty stable. Also, do a little bounce test on here. It stops pretty quickly as well. So even just standing initially, you can kind of feel the quality materials of this board. So overall pretty good. Let's try some other tests. Since the water is pretty still, we're gonna try some tracking tests now. Like in previous videos, we're gonna go for the little wooden boat hanger. Not sure you guys can see it from there, but you will eventually. So we're gonna get a little bit of motion first, and we'll see how many strokes per side we can do. And I'll compare it to the original Cruise. So this Cruise Carbon tracking test. Okay, now that we're getting started a little bit, bit of momentum. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's do the other side. That's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so from this tracking test, I gather about 5 strokes per side until I have to sort of correct. Pretty standard number, but I mean, also the board is 10'8". Typically, the longer the board is, the better the tracking will be. So this is sort of like your run-of-the-medium sized board that'll fit 80% of paddlers. So overall, tracking test pretty standard for a board like this. I was expecting maybe perhaps a little bit more, but now we'll compare it to Bluefin Cruise. See how it does. Okay, next we're gonna do the tracking of the Bluefin Cruise. So the Cruise Carbon did about 5 strokes per side. So once again, we're gonna try to be in the same-ish position using that little hanger as sort of the target. So get a little bit of momentum, and let's see how many strokes per side we can do here. Just tell right off the bat, bouncing. This board definitely has a little bit more bounce compared to the Cruise Carbon. I can feel a little bit of extra rebound when I do that. Okay, we're getting sidetracked. Let's get to tracking here. Okay, so let's do it now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strokes one side. Let's try next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so the tracking is actually supremely similar. Both boards have the 3 fin setup, the dolphin fins. Of course, the Cruise Carbon has the US fin box dolphin fin versus the Cruise, which just sort of has a proprietary fin setup for all 3. So, and it makes about sense. These boards are both exact same size, pretty much the same shape. So therefore, they both track at about the same amount. Okay, let's do some maneuverability tests with the Cruise 10.8, the original. So we're gonna do a side paddle, see how many we can do for a 360. So let's just kind of face the hanger. Once again, it's a little bit easier. It's pointing to something. Okay, we'll just sort of stop. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, about 10 strokes, let's just say. Pretty decent for a 10.8 board. If I was to estimate, I would estimate that the Cruise Carbon will be the same, just basing that on the tracking and the fact that the fin setups are pretty much almost identical. But we will test it out. Next, let's do sweep strokes. So reverse sweep strokes, I should say. So nose pointing to the little hanger there. Okay. Okay, I'll say about 3.5 reverse sweep strokes. I'd give that a half. All right, so those are the testing scores for the Cruise. Now let's try the Cruise Carbon. Okay, Trevor, how do you like the Cruise Carbon?
It's cruising pretty good.
Cruising pretty good, nice. He's got, true? Hear that? It's cruising pretty good. Okay. Now, time to do some maneuverability tests with the Cruise Carbon. So we're almost sort of at a standstill. And as per usual, hanger as the pointer. Let's get to it. Interesting. So the Cruise was 10 reverse side paddles. So this Cruise Carbon was 11. Very interesting. Now it could also be slight differences between the paddle, but I would have thought it would have been the exact same, but it's interesting to me that the Cruise Carbon actually took that extra stroke. So now let's do reverse sweep strokes and we'll see how it goes. So let's get to it. Okay, so this one was 4, while the cruise was 3.5. So one of the things I actually thought as well is that it could also be because Cruise Carbon is a little bit heavier compared to the cruise. So that's definitely a factor that could come into play as well. So interesting. So overall for maneuverability test, the Cruise Carbon is about a stroke and a half more, essentially. Very interesting. Okay, let's do a little speed test for the Cruise Carbon. I already did a little bit of one and it felt to me that the Cruise Carbon was a bit quicker, but let's try it. Let's start. Okay. Cruise Carbon felt a little bit quicker the first time I was going, probably because I'm a little more tired, but that was the speed of the Cruise Carbon. I kind of have a feeling that it'll be faster than the original cruise, so let's see if that's true. Cabin life. All right, this is our little kayak setup video for comparing the Bluefin Cruise and the Bluefin Cruise Carbon, 10/8 boards. We could even do a tracking test, so let's try that with kayak setup. Once again, the hangar will be a little testing ground. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd imagine the tracking for the kayak conversion setup will be very similar, but we'll just see. Next, we're gonna do the Cruise Carbon. So I do appreciate that Bluefin includes a kayak kit. So essentially this paddle and then the kayak seat. But I do feel it would be beneficial if they had some sort of footrest here. So you can rest your foot just like that, be able to engage your core a little bit more. Maybe they can do that in the future, but there's some other companies like Isle that have that sort of feature, especially with the switch. So now let's try the Cruise Carbon kayak setup, see if it feels a little bit more different or not. Now we're in kayak formation for the Cruise Carbon. You can see coming through a little bit of wake. Not too bad though. So compared to the cruise, I kind of feel like the Cruise Carbon glides just a little bit better in kayak formation. And we'll do, probably best not to get in the way of people when they're shooting from the cabin. So we'll go and we'll do some tracking tests just further over there. And we'll kind of see if the results are 5 paddles aside for tracking. Now we're gonna do some tracking test, kayak conversion setup. So we're just gonna, again, shoot for this little hanger here as we usually do. Let's just see, out of curiosity, how many sides we can paddle here. So, okay, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna give it 6, but let's try this side. Straighten a little bit. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's about somewhat of a similar score, I think. About 5 strokes aside for kayak conversion setup in terms of tracking. Overall, same thing. I managed to set up the seat a little bit better for the Cruise Carbon. So it does feel a little more comfortable, like I can actually lean back, which is pretty nice. Although once again, I do feel like those standard sort of like cushy kayak conversion seats, they're pretty good, but they're good for, you know, like an hour or 2 or so of kayaking, but I wouldn't do this for many, many hours. I feel like inflatable chairs are a little bit better. And like I said, footrests would be ideal for this specific paddleboard as well, just so I'd be able to transfer a little more power from my abs. But overall, it's not bad. It's very pleasant, especially whenever you're paddling for a long time and you kind of are just tired, you want to have a little sit down. Well, you put into kayak conversion setup and away you go. So, and the fact that it does come with the board, you can't really speak too bad about it. But overall though, especially people starting out in paddleboarding, this is actually a pretty good setup, especially if you're not entirely comfortable standing on the board, you just want to sit. This is a great alternative for sure. Okay, this is a speed test of the Cruise, so let's see how fast we can get this board. One of my predictions, I think, is that the acceleration will be a bit better on the Cruise because it's lighter, but I think the Cruise Carbon will glide a little bit better thanks to its rigidity, but let's find out. Speed, I don't think it's as much as the Cruise Carbon, to be honest, but I did feel that the acceleration a little bit better because it is a little bit lighter weight. This test is also slightly skewed because paddling through some waves, but so far those are the findings. So overall, the biggest things that stood out between the Cruise 10.8 and the Cruise Carbon 10.8 is the fact that the Cruise Carbon 10.8 felt like is a little bit more stable. There is a bit of a noticeable difference, especially with the price tag. So if you're a beginner and price isn't really an issue for you, I would recommend the Cruise Carbon 10.8. But if you want do a little bit more, let's just say performance paddling, I would actually opt for the 12-foot Cruise Carbon. It'll give you better tracking, glide, and you'll be able to go a little bit further with less strokes and less correcting. So this is Derek from InflatableSupAuthority.com. Thank you for joining me. And now I'm gonna grab a nice refreshing beverage with these boys here. And yeah, thank you for watching.